Boxing movie fans can rejoice because there's two boxing films that look incredibly good this year. And I'm curious which one's going to be the better film. Is it going to be Jake Gyllenhaal in Southpaw? Or is it going to be Michael B. Jordan in Creed? So, Southpaw is directed by Antoine Fuqua, which I highly respect as an action director, and I'm a big fan of his work. Now, I have not seen all of his films. The one movie I still have to see is Tears of the Sun, but all the movies I did see of his, I really enjoyed. He's responsible for Training Day, King Arthur, Shooter, Brooklyn's Finest, Olympus Has Fallen, and one of the latest ones, The Equalizer. I think the only film that I've seen of his that I actually thought was a little more forgettable and didn't like as much is Bait. But honestly, that still wasn't that bad of a movie. It was just a little more forgettable. So instead of a straight-up action film like several of the others, he is doing a boxing film. And Jake Gyllenhaal is in it, and man, he's ripped. Overall, Southpaw is your typical boxing movie, but any fan of that genre is still gonna love it because it's what you expect from a boxing film. Jake Gyllenhaal is this boxer, and he's undefeated, and he's completely epic. He basically waits to get beat up quite a bit before he just lets the rage fill him and just let it all out in the opponent. And he definitely has some rage issues in this movie. But just when everything is going great, tragedy strikes and he's left on his own and he's miserable, he loses everything. He loses his daughter and he's trying to get custody of her, he loses tons of stuff. He goes spiraling down. But he tries to get his life back together, trains with Forrest Whitaker, and from then on it becomes a riches to rags to riches story. Now, I definitely enjoyed this film. It wasn't one of my most anticipated movies of the year, but it was up there. Jake Gyllenhaal does it again where he completely transforms into a totally different person, and it feels like this is what his acting is going to be like from now on. He's very committed to his role, and it's not as crazy and it's not as mind-blowing as Nightcrawler, but overall it's still a good performance. And by far, I think the acting in this film is pretty superior. Forrest Whitaker is great and is probably the most experienced and the best performance in this movie. The most surprising performance that I really enjoyed, and definitely this kid has a career for her, is the young girl in Southpaw, the daughter. Just looked up her name. I'm hoping I can pronounce this right. Una Lawrence. Yeah, that's how it's spelled. Yeah, she's no pushover. She can do some really good dramatic stuff, and I haven't seen any of the other films that she's previously been in, so she feels like she's come out of nowhere. And I hope she continues to make a career if she decides to stay in acting, because that kid is, wow. Now, overall, all the performances were great, but I think those three were the best and the most noticeable, but then again, they are pretty much the main characters of this movie. The boxing sequences are brutal and great, and anyone that loves boxing films is gonna love those scenes. And similar to most Antoine Fuqua's action films, there is a great amount of drama in it. And you can look at some of his other straight-up action films, there's an element of drama and there's an element of seriousness, and there's almost like it's trying to definitely push to be more than just your typical action film. That's what Antoine Fuqua does. And for this one, it's probably more of a drama than it is a boxing film. It is very heavy, very tragic, very depressing at times. Now, this is going to work for some people more than others. Overall, I did enjoy this movie. I did enjoy the heaviness and the depression in this movie, but at times it did feel a little too heavy for my liking, but not that often. It's just certain times in this movie, and it could have been cut back a little bit. Now, one of the flaws of this movie isn't a particularly big flaw, especially if you're a fan of boxing movies, because this is what you come to expect. It is very cliched. Everything in this film you can pretty much predict, and everything in this film feels like it's already been done before in other boxing films. But overall, that's not that big of a deal if you're a fan of these kind of movies, because what else can they do in a boxing film that hasn't been done already? And having seen quite a bit of Antoine Fuqua's work, there is a similarity to some of his other works in Southpaw, and that is, like I said, it tries to be a little bit more of a drama, and sometimes it tries to cram a little too much subplot into the movie, which is all fine and dandy if it's fully fleshed out and it feels complete by the end of the movie. But some of the subplots, while they are complete technically, aren't completed in a fulfilling manner, at least not for me. I think to get a better example of what I'm trying to talk about is, if you've seen The Equalizer, it has a very similar thing in it where it tries to have all these different subplots. Now those felt a little bit more fleshed out and a little bit more complete than the ones in Southpaw, but Southpaw doesn't have as many of them as The Equalizer did, and I think that's why a lot more people dislike The Equalizer than they do Southpaw. But there is quite a bit of similarities to the two movies. At the same time, similar to some of other Antoine Fuqua's work, Southpaw did seem very long, and I think what helped it feel long is because of the heaviness throughout the entire film, as well as the different little subplots here and there. And there is a moment where I was watching the film and I felt like this is kind of going on forever. Maybe we could cut something in this film to make it shorter? But overall, when you think about all the things that are in this movie, it already feels like they had cut a few things, and this is as short as they can get it. So it still feels like a complete movie where you need everything that is in this movie, but at the same time it does still feel a little long and it needs to be cut a little shorter somehow. But overall, I did really enjoy Southpaw, and there's quite a bit of excellence throughout the film. There's phenomenal performances. It's cliched, but if you're a big fan of boxing films, that is not going to bug you, and you're probably going to absolutely love this film. For me, I'm a little on the fence. There's moments where I feel like it should be more of a 4-star movie, but I'm a little hesitant, and I feel like I should give it 3.5. So, in honesty, I should give it 3.75, but I don't do quarters, at least not this year, so I'm gonna have to go with 3.5 for Southpaw. So have you seen Southpaw? What did you think about it? Go ahead and comment. If you haven't seen Southpaw, what is your favorite boxing film of all time? I know a lot of people love The Warrior. I have not seen it yet. I really want to see it, and hopefully that might end up being my favorite boxing film of all time, if I get a chance to see it. But as always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.